Mick Strafford, thank you very much for agreeing to talk to us. Tell us the inspiration for this car, because there's a story behind why you did it.
Well, I'd been a Vauxhall fan ever since my father bought his first new car, which was a Vauxhall Viva in 1971. And I've always had this connection with them. And when historic rallying started with the post-historic class, that then enabled us to use some of the older stuff that I like the Firenzas. But the problem with them is the engines were not easy to get parts for. And I thought, I'm going to have a look on the internet and see if there's anything else out there. I knew I had a friend who got one of these cars, but his was a road car. And the rules state that you've got to be able to prove that a car was used on rallies in period. And so I did some surfing on the internet and found this and thought, right, great, that's where I'm going to go to. So I managed to get hold of one of the guys who rallied one of these over in South Africa. And I rang him up and I said, can you remember the specification of the car? And he said, oh, I don't know, it's 30 odd years ago, I'm not sure that I can do that, but I'll give it some thought, I'll send you a fax. Anyway, true to his word, a couple of days later, a fax arrived and it said, Dear Mick, they built 100 of these cars to homologate them for racing. I thought we could use this as a rally car. They told me it would never work. They were wrong, it did. If you do this, this, this and this to the car, you will annihilate escorts. Kind regards, Jan. And to be fair, I took this to the Motorsports Authority, which is now Motorsport UK. I took that to them and said, this is the specification that we've been told they ran in. And they said, yeah, great, go for it. So we built it over a period.
So explain for the uninitiated who haven't even seen the car yet, right? It's not a normal Firenza engine. They did something a bit special.
They did, yeah. They managed to get hold of, I think it was 104 5-litre engines from America, which you'd think to yourself, well, surely that's not difficult. But back then, when the boss of GM South Africa contacted America and said, can we have these engines? They said, how many do you want? He said, we want just over 100. They said, no, we'll do you 10 or we'll do you 10,000, but we're not doing 100. And this guy pestered and pestered and pestered until eventually they did. So they sent over the engines, they sent over some 4-speed Muncie gearboxes, and a guy called Basil Van Rooyen over in South Africa put these cars together with a fair bit of help from General Motors. They started racing them and the things were incredibly successful. They were a lot quicker than the V8 Capris and were doing really well. And then unfortunately, the fuel crisis hit in 1973 and that was the end of it. So they disbanded the team, they sold the cars off. The race cars, they're supposed to have been broken for spares, and certainly the rally cars were broken as well, so none of them exist. So what we did with this is we built the best replica that we could do of the car back in its day. And we brought it out in 2010, and then we've been using it ever since, and it's just been a fantastic journey.
At Western, when I was there, this is the only car that got more attention than the Group B cars. It was the loudest car,
yeah,
the most spectacular car, and it was instantly the crowd favourite, which I presume is a lot of what it was aimed at. But you've got a Camaro V8,
yeah,
4-speed gearbox,
yeah, 4-speed Muncie gearbox.
Rear axle?
Volvo. Yeah, it's a Volvo. I think it's either a 240 or a 960.
I think it'll be a 940 or 960 because ours has got an automatic. It comes with a limited slip diff.
Ah, right.
So it's that.
So that's probably this is obviously this has got a limited slip diff as well.
Having the axle.
Yeah, yeah, that's what they used back in the day, and we found it to be a really, really strong axle, which it needs to be, as you can see.
My dad's going to be so happy because Vauxhall with a Volvo axle is what we're driving now.
Yeah. Absolutely, they're an amazing thing. It was really one man's vision, which was Basil Van Rooyen, who wanted to do this. I believe he fell out with the Ford team manager, and he approached General Motors and said, "Look, I want to do this." And interestingly, the guy who backed him from GM, the boss of GM South Africa, was a guy called Bob Price, and Bob Price left there, came to Vauxhall, saw Ford's winning the RAC rally year in, year out, and said to a guy called Bill Blydenstein, who was running the Works Vauxhall team back then, "What do we need to do to win the RAC?" And he was the guy that then sorted out the Chevette HS. So the guy's been brilliant, absolutely brilliant. He's long dead now, sadly, Bob Price. I'd have loved to have met him. But yeah, I was always hoping that this car was going to be popular with the spectators. It's probably exceeded my hopes. It seems more popular than that. Some people don't get it. Some people, are not really into V8s. But
there was a little kid right next to me. Must have been about 4.
Yeah.
And he was going, the growly car's coming.
Yeah, that just about sums it up. Yeah. It was great. Western Park, we get the opportunity to run the ultra loud exhaust that we've got every so often, and Western was one of those events. It was great. It's a megaphone, so it's not just louder than a standard exhaust, it actually amplifies the sound, so it's shatteringly noisy. And people ask me why I'm deaf, and I don't think I need to explain that now.
To drive, okay, you've got all that. How much power is it?
This has got what we call it a demonstration engine. This one's 555 brake horsepower. Yeah. And you can hoon about in it like I do, and generally, make a fool of yourself and so on, but try and entertain the fans. Or you can drive it like Jimmy McRae drives it, because Jim's driven this now, it's got to be well over 20 times on events. He did the British Historic Rally Championship with it and helped us with the development of the car. And if you drive it like him and you feed the power in and you drive it properly, then it's amazing just how quick this thing is. It really is fast. And the suspension's great on it, so it hooks up really, really well. And we're allowed to run wider tyres now than we were at first. At one time the rules were we could run 185 70s and that was it. Well, now we can run slightly wider ones than that and better rubber, and you can get so much more traction. And if you're taking it seriously and you're on a proper event, you can really get this thing to shift. Yeah. But by the same token, it's also very, very easy to light up the bike tyres.
But I bet you with the power and the handling, it's actually surprised. I have a gut feeling that this is actually very relatively easy to drive, because it must communicate quite quickly when it's going to go and slide easily, and it's easy to catch, I imagine. Yeah,
one of the things you can do with this car that's harder with an Escort is you can start the back wheels spinning and then you can keep them spinning. So whereas with an Escort, they tend to, so they'll go so far sideways on tarmac and then they'll try to straighten themselves up. With this, because you've got so much power, you can just keep sliding it, and it's just tremendous fun. Jim was once asked which was his favourite rally car of all time, and he said the Metro 6R4, because it was Group B. He was in the middle of the Group B thing. It was exciting. The car was amazing. And then somebody said, well, what was the most fun? And he pointed at this and said, that by a country mile. And I think it doesn't get any better than that for me, because I've been a fan of Jim since the 70s.
Me too, yeah. Him and Russell Brooks.
And Russell Brooks, that era was just amazing.
Together were brilliant, weren't they?
Yeah, it was incredible. Because we've been on such a journey with this car. We've done so many things with it. We managed to get Jan Hettemer over from South Africa to come and drive it. We've had Stig Blomqvist drive it, and he loved the car, and it's just been wonderful. And now that COVID's hopefully more under control, we'll be able to get out a lot more next year and try and do some more events with the car. But we've done events that I never really I always wondered whether I'd like them or not. We've done a couple of hill climbs, and they've been fantastic. And some of the demonstration rallies that we do are brilliant. And we've been out to Spain with it. It's been out to Spain 3 times, and the reaction we get out there is just insane. So it's been brilliant. I've met all sorts of people. I've met some of my heroes, and it's just been fantastic.
That basically is what it's all about.
This is the thing, you know, at the end of the day, I always feel that I'm there, if I'm doing a demo, I'm there to try and entertain the spectators. And you'll see pictures afterwards with people with great big grins on their faces and so on. And I think, yeah, that's what it's all about. That's what I want to do. I want to entertain. I'm not the fastest driver by a long chalk. You know, Malcolm Wilson from Ford, I gave him till I was 60 to ring me with the offer of a works drive, but it never happened. It just never happened. So I've given that up now. It's not going to happen. So seriously, no. I mean, I've never been quick enough to get anywhere on rallies. But what I can do is entertain people with this car, and it's just brilliant.
I'd say you definitely give people the biggest smile.
Thank you. That's what it's all about for me.
Okay, so this is a customer car. Tell me a bit about this.
Well, we started building this car a few years ago, and this was meant to be a replica of one of the race cars that they ran out there. And we started it, and then we got busy at work and put it on one side for a while and so on. And we didn't get around to finishing the thing off. And we've got a long-term customer here called Jonathan Gale. And Jonathan borrowed my Firenza to do an event in Mallorca and absolutely adored it. He just loved the car. So when he saw that we got this body shell that was part finished, he asked us if we could buy it. And I thought, well, yeah, all right, it's going to be ages before we get this thing done. Let's do that. So we built this car as a bit of a dual purpose one. You can run it in the setup that it's here, which is similar to my car, in that it meets the historic specifications. So we've got narrow arches and so on, and it's got the right roll cage in, and you've got the smaller brakes on it and what have you. But he wants to do more events in Mallorca. So for Mallorcan events, the thing it looks crazy. It's got huge arches on it, enormous wheels, big brakes, big engine. It just looks fantastic. And we're hoping that early next year we're going to be able to get it back out there again, and then he's going to try and do probably half a dozen of the events over there. But this is everything that we've learned from my car we've put into this one to make this that little bit better.
Wow. So it's in terms of spec, is it similar in terms of the engine and...
Yeah, for historic rounds, we're stuck with a 5-litre engine. We've got to run smaller brakes and so on. There are strong restrictions on what you can do. But in Mallorca and a lot of the European events, the restrictions are a lot less. So he can do things with the car out there that we wouldn't get away with over here. I suppose I could do for demonstration rallies, I could do that if it came down to it. But I'm happy with TDH. TDH is my baby, and I'm happy with it as it is. But for certain events, with Jonathan, I wouldn't say the sky's the limit, but it's pretty much as far as you're going to get with one of these things. And it's just a sensational looking car.